Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Facebook Live, previewing Week 4 of the high school football season. Along with Jarrod Ulrey, I'm Dave Purpura, and our first guest today is the coach of the Hilliard Bradley Jaguars. You guys are trying to go to 4-0 tomorrow night when you take on Hilliard Derby. Mike LoParo, welcome in. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Been a fun season for you guys. I know I saw you at New Albany, a pretty dominating win, but you've had 3 pretty good wins so far.
Yeah, you know, we're just, again, we're pretty cliche in what we do. We're just trying to go 1-0 every week, and that's our focus, and we're real simple about how we do it.
What's been the big, real factor, I guess, you know, some of the common themes so far?
We have some explosive kids on offense, which I think gives defenses fits, and I think the difference that we're seeing with our group, maybe from the past few years, is I think our defense has risen to our offense's side in terms of what they've been capable of doing.
Okay.
You know, Coach, you guys took a big step forward last year, making it to the playoffs. How did that affect your program over the last year? I mean, was that a pretty big thing for you guys?
It was. You know, I think you have to take those steps before you become a perennial program that can do those things year in and year out. You know, you can see around the stadium, we have those things shown, so our kids see those on a daily basis and use those things as motivation from year to year.
Of course, you had to replace a pretty good, you talk about the kids who were mentioned up there. Will Phillips, one of them, a first-team All-State honoree, a quarterback last year. Tell us about Josh's progression and the adjustments you've had to make bringing a new guy.
I think progression's a great word. I think from week to week to week, these first 3, we've seen major progress in what Josh does. He's starting to get comfortable in the offense. He's starting to understand exactly how we're trying to attack a defense. And hopefully we just continue to see progress throughout the season.
You mentioned the explosiveness on offense. Tell us about these 3 really talented wide receivers you have.
We really have 4 when you consider Zach Hummel, but you know, Trey and Davin and Corey. You know, Corey we didn't have last year. We lost him the first game of the year. Davin was first-team All-State last year. Even though he hasn't scored, he understands his role amongst the trio. Last year was more just him, and this year he understands that that's not how it's going to work. And then you know, they're all different. You know, one's kind of scatty and fast. One's really tall and fast. One's more of an old school throwback style of receiver, and it creates some matchup problems for defenses. So they're real fun to have and really fun to watch.
Trey had a huge play on special teams in that win at New Albany as well. Has that been an area where some of these guys have been able to be threats too?
Yeah, you know, I think when you have kids like that, sometimes you have I don't know, how do you say this, that the punt return team sometimes isn't always an engaged group. You know, we've seen that in the past, and these kids are really dialed in on punt return because they know they've got a kid back there that can take it, and they want to hold blocks as long as they can. On that particular punt return, our starting linebacker, Cannon Blauser, held a block for 9 seconds.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's fun to have those kids back there. It makes the whole team want to work hard for them.
So you got your second consecutive week of Hilliard matchups here. What's your thoughts about the matchup this week against?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we're trying to get them up 2 weeks in a row for Hilliard versus Hilliard rivalry games, I guess you can call them at this point. And I know Darby's very physical. They're very well coached and they run good systems. So we're going to have to play very well to beat them.
People talk about how Davidson and Darby have a lot of similar philosophies. What, as an opposing coach 2 weeks in a row, does that preparation help you 1 week to the next, or are there some differences?
You know, as much as you don't like to play them back to back, it's actually beneficial to us because we're seeing the same style 2 weeks in a row, and really when you consider New Albany before them, it's 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
So our kids have had to kind of sharpen up and be tougher in the trenches and hold their ground, be more physical. You know, versus the spread, it's more about playing in space, and versus those teams, it's about physicality at the point of attack.
Okay. Well, hey, Coach, thank you for coming over. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Coach Mike LoParo, Hilliard Bradley, looking to go to 4-0 as they take on Hilliard Derby, and they're trying for their 3rd straight win in the series. I mean, you talk about playing these rivalry games back-to-back. They're trying to beat Derby for the 3rd year in a row here.
It's not even really that old of a school. That's what's kind of impressive about it. I mean, just less than a decade, right?
It was a 2008 or 09 when it opened out here.
I mean, very impressive the way that this program has continued to progress year after year. It's very impressive, I think.
When you asked them, about breaking through, making the playoffs, and that gives you something tangible to shoot for. And Darby's trying to get back there. That's a big thing for them, too.
Absolutely. And you got to figure that team, Darby in particular, this is we're going to learn some things about them this week. I mean, they had the game where they gave up a lot of points to Olentangy, but they've also shown that they can play pretty good defense. I mean, the way they played last week.
This is a league opener, by the way. I mean, not all the teams are, because we have a lot of 16 divisions in the OCC. Their division, the Cardinal, I believe, is what, 7 or 8?
That's right,
I guess.
7.
And so they've got the early league game now. One thing, looking at the research for Darby here, Darby doesn't have a 100-yard rusher yet, which is kind of surprising out of them, but they seem to spread the production.
Yeah, and their quarterback is, it looks like that they're trying to hand the ball off a lot. He's and he's one of these guys that's probably, they don't want him to make any mistakes. He's that kind of a quarterback, it sure seems like.
Like a game manager,
right?
Sort of thing. So, and speaking of good quarterbacks, we're going to see one tomorrow night at Pickerington North. We've talked about Jimmy Wyrick, the Panthers coming off their first loss of the year. Now they're at home against Westerville Central tomorrow night. Interesting matchup.
The thing about that game last week, I mean, that was one of those could have gone either way against Centerville. And I think we're going to see Centerville probably in that playoff mix the whole season. That's not going to look like a bad loss here in a few weeks from now. So, one thing when I was doing some research for this game that was really impressive to me was Westerville Central's ability to take some steps forward again this year after, they had kind of a down season for them last year. I mean, Coach John Registro doesn't really have a lot of down seasons in the times that he's been a coach.
Yeah, it was rare.
Very rare. And so it seems like they just got really refocused and they figured out what they want to do this year. I mean, Alan Smith is off to a really great start for them.
Yeah, 547 yards, not he personally, but the team ranked up against Eastmore last week. Yeah, Central lost to Gahanna to begin the season. A couple other teams lost to Gahanna too.
Made some adjustments, obviously, since then.
Yep, came back and played well against Upper Arlington and then beat Eastmore Academy last week. Big-time clash of Region 2 teams tomorrow night up in Lewis Center. Dublin Kaufman, which is one of a couple teams we're going to talk about today that has not allowed a point so far this year. They're at Olentangy.
Yeah, and I think that we knew that this Week 4 game was going to be really crucial for them. I mean, the first 3 weeks, obviously the schedule is not quite as tough as it's been for some teams, but what they're doing is still, it's impressive. They've outscored their teams 132-0. And they've only given up 66 rushing yards all season. Yeah. So, what do you think Olentangy might try to do against them? I know you follow them really close.
Well, they're going to have to eliminate mistakes, the big thing. That was their problem against Reynoldsburg last week. They were 0 of 5 on fourth down conversions, and Reynoldsburg converted those into 3 touchdowns. They just really never got a chance to get much going on the ground, although they were in the game at 17-7 in the third quarter. Riley Bruning, who started for the third time at quarterback this year, he's growing. You can see that for them. Threw a nice touchdown pass, but they just couldn't stop Reynoldsburg on offense. And that's going to be a very big test for them tomorrow night. Valuable points on the line, too.
I believe that I read in our story this week that Coach Mark Solis made some comment about how we're not really a very good football team right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, you got to figure they're going to come out with a much better effort. Even if they're not able to beat Kaufman, I would imagine this is going to be a really good effort for them, probably a really close game.
This is a 35-0 Shamrocks win last year, which I think shocked a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the tougher losses in the Solis era up there, which is now in its 5th season. Another fun one tomorrow night is the Battle of Worthington with Kilbourne and Thomas. I'm the only one that picked the Wolves, so if I'm wrong, to come to me. Everybody else picked the 3-0 Cardinals. They haven't been 4-0 in quite some time. Tomorrow night they're going to face the Wolves.
I don't think any of us would have thought Lowtown Showdown is going to be one of the big games of Week 4. But it's really great. It's a great story.
It is.
Wow. What and the thing about Thomas Worthington that's impressive to me is the way that they've been able to this Khalil Jones player. He seems like he's really the real deal for them. He's got a lot of touchdowns rushing and receiving for them. I think that their offense has been really impressive. And we're going to find out, the one close game they had was against Canal Winchester, a double overtime game. And maybe at the beginning of the season we're thinking, maybe Canal's not very good, maybe Thomas isn't very good, but Canal's 2-1. Kind of makes that win look even better, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Thomas was down 17-0 and came back to win. I was out at Canal doing another story earlier this week, and he was saying, our goal was to wear teams down. We just couldn't wear Thomas Worthington down. They couldn't deliver the knockout punch. And that loss looks better and better every week, even though you really never want to lose a game. Kilbourne has won 5 straight games in that series. Thomas won for the only time in 9 games in 2011. couple, we talked about Davidson a little bit ago. They're facing an old league rival this week, one of the teams you covered,
Liberty.
with Olentangy Liberty.
Yeah, you know, the thing that was good about Liberty last week was they ran the ball well and they passed the ball well. And I think that's going to be a real key for them. And Mitchell Oakley had a much better game, I think, last week. Matthew Webb rushed for over 100 yards for them. They did get off to a little bit of a rough start, and maybe that's, you know, maybe that's something that is a credit to Marysville. I mean, Marysville played a great game. They had a great game plan. They were up 21-13 on Liberty. Liberty was able to come back. So, and then obviously this is the time of the season where Brian White's teams usually, if they've struggled at the beginning, they usually start getting it together. So.
Well, they've lost 2 in a row since that opening win over Grove City, which was a shutout, 24-0. Ben Wright is kind of the bell cow as far as running backs go. 64 carries, 206 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He had 15 carries for 57 yards in the loss to these Jaguars last week. Battle of 3-0 team. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, a few other games we wanted to mention. The one you were about to say, the 3-0 teams. Columbus Academy at London.
Yeah.
I was able to talk to the London coach, Kyle Cutler, in the preseason for our football guide. And, you know, at the time, I think he thought, well, you know, I'm not really sure how good of a team we're going to have. But he did tell me about all these linemen that's kind of like the strength of their team. They've got 2 or 3 guys, I think, that are around the 275 to 300 pound range up there. So they have KJ Price rushed for 433 yards and 5 touchdowns last week. I mean, that speaks for itself.
You mentioned with Kyle Cutler, the brother of UA coach Joel Cutler, being a little surprised at that dominance. It looked like in the story that our Frank Dorena did, previewing this from the academy side of things, that Robin Miller is a little surprised too. I mean, they're the other team we alluded to earlier when we talked about Dublin Kaufman. Academy has outscored its opponents 111-0. And that's unheard of almost 3 weeks.
It's not like they're playing. I mean, Reedy, I think, could still end up being a possible playoff team. So it's not like they're playing terrible teams either. So.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Herman Moultrie, 167 yards and a touchdown and a win over Newark Catholic last week. I know a couple other games that you wanted to touch on. You saw some games in the City League.
There's several City League openers. That's another league getting started this week. You've got Beechcroft at Mifflin, West at Walnut Ridge, and Independence at Briggs. I think on paper, a lot of us thought Walnut Ridge is probably going to be the class of the, either Walnut Ridge or maybe Eastmore are going to be the class of the City South this year.
Yeah.
They're going to have to beat, they opened with the defending league champion, or with, I apologize, West they finished second last year, but they ended up having like their greatest season ever, went 9-2.
Yep, made the playoffs.
Walnut Ridge, West, that's going to be an interesting matchup. And then Beechcroft they're the 3-time defending City North champions. And they're going to play Mifflin at Mifflin.
Yeah.
Mifflin is the 3-0 team. Maybe they're ready to take the reins of this league now this year. So we'll see what happens there.
A few others involving CCL schools. You said Hartley goes to Chillicothe. Reedy is at Grandview Heights. Reedy, which has played some home games on this field at Bradley in the past, is the home team.
That's right.
Even though the game is kind of like the Brewers and Marlins this weekend, Reedy's the home team when they take on Grandview.
I think maybe it means the parents for Reedy are going to be doing the concession stand. I think that's about the only real difference.
You get the gate and things like that.
Yeah, pretty much that. So, and that's a matchup of 2-1 teams. Whereas Hartley at Chillicothe, another matchup of 2-1 teams actually. And I know that Coach Birchfield out of Hartley is looking at this as one of their key games because they have several teams on their schedule that probably aren't going to end up with great records. Chillicothe is one of the ones that looks like a 7-3-ish type of team, something like that. So that's a big one. That's a big game for Hartley coming up this week.
Chillicothe has pretty good coaching pedigree. Ron Hinton, who led Amanda Clear Creek to a couple state titles and actually lost to Academy, I believe, in the state final in 2003.
One of the greatest games. It was a great game.
It was a great one. It was indeed. He's coaching at Chillicothe in about his 10th year or so. I wanted to mention the teams that are 3-0 before we get out of here. I know we've already alluded to a few of them. Orange is 3-0. Walnut Ridge, you mentioned, is 3-0. Granville, Marion, Franklin are 3-0.
That's right.
DeSales, Licking Valley, Northridge, Independence, my alma mater, 21 years ago, and Mifflin, another one that you mentioned, is 3-0. Is that about the number of teams, or do you really is there ever even a surprise, you think, when you get to week 3, that there are still that many undefeated teams?
I think if we go to next week and all those teams are undefeated, maybe then we can start talking about surprises.
Sure.
There's going to be some 3-0 teams, so maybe some of the ones that are 3-0 might be a little bit of a surprise. I mean, I'm not sure that a lot of us would have pegged you know, an Independence or a Granville to be 3-0. But it's great that they are.
Speaking of next week, we're going to be previewing Week 5. That's the halfway point of the regular season already. 5 of these in the books and several more to go. Been a lot of fun out here today.
That's right.
We will let you know online where we're going to be next week at some point. For Jarrod, Ulrey, I'm Dave Purpura. So long, everybody.